We are going to talk about Webstore popularity and adoption. What does the data say? And I think we've got Gil from Appcharge. Gil from Appcharge. Sorry, my pronunciation is terrible, Gil. Come on up, Gil. And you'll tell us all about that. Looking forward to seeing what the data says.
You can take it if you like.
Well, I think I'm on a panel. I think I'm on a panel soon. So I need to find out if that's
Are you on the last panel?
I think so. Let me take a look. Oh, no. It's actually, yeah, it's not for a while, so I'll give this to you until then.
Are you...
Try again?
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
All right. How's everyone doing? All right, long day. Yeah, I'm going to talk about Webstore popularity. So we've been talking about web stores a lot in the last, well, I don't know, like 5 panels. Let's talk about what the data says. I'm going to present a report that we did recently, but before all of that, just a few words about myself. So I see some familiar faces in the space here, which is great. My name is Gil. I've been a gamer all my life. Played World of Warcraft more hours than I'd like to admit. And I've been developing and building platforms and systems in gaming for roughly 15 years. I led the marketing team at Overwolf for a couple of years, and I joined this crazy rocket ship that is Appcharge 6 months ago. What is Appcharge? So Appcharge is the leading DTC platform for mobile games. We're processing $200 million a year, and we're working with some of the biggest games in the space. We provide a white label solution, and we give publishers all the tools that they need to sell directly to players. So everything from building perfect, like fully branded, native feeling web stores that players love to buy in, through actually selling like a gateway global checkout solution, an in-game SDK for side loading and other solutions that want to sell directly within the app with IAPs, and a data layer that kind of makes us special, utilizing our monetization expertise and analyzing the data and helping grow ARPU and other deep dive analysis in data to give value to our users, to our clients, sorry. We recently announced a big funding round and backed by really wonderful partners and investors, and that's us. All right, so talking about Webstore popularity, kind of a tricky subject. Why is that a tricky subject? So if I want to go to find a web store, do you guys have any idea or any thought on roughly what % of the web stores is publicly available? I can go to Google and find a web store. Any guesses? Is that right? 80%. All right, so many web stores are actually not publicly available. They're either not indexed on Google, or there's something like kept like a cloak and dagger to only be exposed to VIP players, because we don't want to damage game economy, we don't want to the everyday player to get to the web store, many categories. So when we set out to just like find out how popular web stores are, some cases it was easy. We just like Googled and we find the web stores. In some cases we had to draw some strings and use our connections within the industry to actually spot and find those web stores. But be that as it may, we wanted to take this head on and find some data to actually show how popular web stores are. Because we've been hearing about web stores a lot for the last 3 to 4 years. But like, is it still like the next big thing? Or is it something that's like has there's enough critical mass to actually be like a standard monetization channel and avenue? We released this report late last year. It was covered with Navic, the Constructor of Fun, and Mobile Gamer Biz as well, alongside many others. And this is what I'm going to share today. A bit about the method. So we started with sensor tower data to find the top 20 grossing games in the US across each category of games. And then we spread them out to categories, again, based on the labeling of sensor tower. And then we went out and find the web stores. As I said before, sometimes it was really easy. Sometimes we had to jump through some hoops. So the data I'm showing you here is, some of it is already outdated. For example, Rovio Angry Birds already have a web store. In this report, it says that it does not, and so on. But I hope you guys will find this interesting. All right. So the report is broken down into categories, and I'm gonna do a momentary pause here across each of these, and I want to hear you guys like say something. I don't want that to be like a one-way street here. All right, so again, in the methodology, we're talking the top 20 grossing games. In this case, social casino category. So any guesses? Out of the top 20 grossing games, what % of casual casino games have a web store? 20. I hear 20. I hear, all right, back of the room. 80. 90. All right. So it's actually 100. All right. I think the slides are a little bit too small to actually see the 20 individual games, but I think we're going to send the slides after, right? But it's actually 100% of the top 20 games in the social casino category already operate a web store. So we see like games like across the board, across the regions, across different culture of players. We see this everywhere in this category. Games like, so publishers like Product Madness and of course Playtika and Big Fish, and we see this everywhere. So why do we see such like widespread adoption in casual casino games? Here are a couple of examples. What I want you to focus on here is the vast like variety that we see between the different stores. So these are just a few examples. We see, for example, here a very clear welcome offer to immediately explain the value of the store. We see sophisticated monetization tools like an accumulation bar. And these guys in social casino are really like at the forefront of experimenting with things and trying out new things. That's why we see such a big variety of the stores being applied. So why do we see this success in this category? So there are three main reasons. First off, and you're going to see this, let me do a spoiler, you're going to see this reason come off a lot in a lot of the next categories. But high ARPU games, high LTV games have it much easier. VIP-driven games, well-driven games, all I need to do to have a successful web store is maybe convert like 5% of my players. And to put things even better for social casino games, many of these games already started out with very sophisticated VIP client management infrastructures, with VIP client managers and communication methods and CRMs. So it was really easier for them to get that very high engaged player cohort and get them educated about the fact that the store exists and have them gravitate towards buying on the store. That's the first reason. We also see a lot of culture of innovation, like I said in the previous slide. These guys will try it. Player trust is important. We're not going to want to erode player trust, but within the wiggle room, within like the degrees of freedom that we have, these guys will try. These guys and our partners will be open to experimenting with things, and you can say the same on some of the other categories I'm going to get to in a second here. All right, next up. Strategy games. Out of the top 20 grossing strategy games, what percentage have adopted a web store? Let me hear some guesses.
80.
Sorry? 80. All right, 80%. So not as successful as casual casino, but again, like we don't see the full list, I guess, like in the small slides, but we have here games like Pokemon Go that we're going to get to in a second, and a lot of others, like we see a lot of adoption here as well. We're going to get why too in a second. Let's see some examples. So what I want you to focus on here, this is Pokemon Go. So what I want you to focus on here is the middle screen, right? So when you adopt a D2C strategy effectively and accurately, what we see here is a support article, right? And you can also see this in how they do like one-on-one support with support tickets. When you want to adopt a habit, you want to make it available for your players to find resources about where you want them to gravitate towards and purchase. So we want to send them to the right places. We want to educate them about where to find the best offers, and want to get them to gravitate towards that place and adopt this as a habit. So breaking down why strategy games are so successful, again, we see the high ARPU, right? Just to put things in perspective, like Call of Duty is the #1 LTV game in 2023. #1. Pokemon Go is #3, right? So we're seeing the highest LTV games out there, which makes it, again, very easy to find success within the web store, and that's like one of the main reasons. So another interesting thing is established player bases. So these games, many of the games who populate the top 20 chart here have been around for ages, like 5 years or more. And having been around for so long gives those developers time to establish those communication channels with those players and talk to them directly already. And when D2C entered the scene, it was easy to use those channels, again, to educate players that these things exist and to get them to adopt this as a habit. All right, moving on to action games. I'm going to move on for the guessing because it's actually really, really similar to strategy. We're looking at 75% adoption out of the top 20. One mistake here with the Angry Birds, that's no longer correct. We just saw that Angry Birds have a web store as well, but these are the numbers. And when we look at the deep dive analysis, this is Call of Duty. So what we want to see here is how effectively they communicate the value of the offers that you can find in the web store. Looking at the breakdown, there's sorry about the PDF error there and breaking down the word breakdown. But two interesting things here to note about strategy games, again, like Call of Duty, like the other ones, with the competitive nature. So many of the games we saw in the previous categories, it's more along the lines of the games that you play solo versus strategy games where you would often, action games, which you often play in a competitive environment. So things like skins, things like visual upgrades, things like expressions of your personality within the game become more prevalent in this category, which contributed to why they've seen success. All right, and then lastly, casual games. I am going to do a guessing game here. Out of the top 20 casual games in the US, how many operate a web store in percent? 60%. I have 60 here. 80. 30. Interesting. So it's actually 30%. So it's a stark difference from the other categories that we saw. We're going to get to Y2 in a second, but looking at the list here, it's, again, like I would even attribute more of that 30% to the way sensor data labels games, like we see Brawl Stars here in an example. And so other than like Moon Active and other ones who are actually like casual who are operating a web store, there are very few examples of casual publishers who are effectively operating a web store. And we'll get Y2 in a second. Talking about Moon Active and CoinMaster, we see here two examples. What we want to focus on here is, again, this is a casual publisher, but is implementing a lot of sophisticated monetization tools, kind of like the accumulation bar that we see here, to educate players and get the habit forming around keep coming back to repeat purchases. So keep coming back tomorrow, keep coming back for an updated reward and all of that. All right, talking about the breakdown again with a broken down word. So the number one thing that casual games will suffer from in this context is with a lower LTV. So we saw in all the previous three categories about how important, how effective high LTV and high ARPU are to generate a success within the web store. And this is the exact opposite case. So if in casual casino I only need to get, I don't know, like 3% or 5% of my player base to gravitate towards buying even sporadically on the web store, here I'm looking at 30 to 40%. Because if I want to see success in the web store, there's a lot more volume of players that I need to convince. We kind of heard it being mentioned in the previous panels about AI tools to do communication at scale. If I need to communicate with 30 to 300,000 players, I cannot do it one-on-one. This is exactly the thing of like economies of scale that happen here when we are trying to move and migrate hundreds of thousands of players to somewhere else. It's not as easy as like doing it with VIP client management and do it with a 10 or 20 or 100. And then the last reason is that casual games, well, all games have this, but casual games have this specifically where a lot of the purchases are being made in a behavioral way in terms of like impulsive. We heard this in Archie talk about introducing a friction and then alleviating that friction with a purchase. So we see that a lot in casual games. And when we think about a web store is an experience that is outside of the game. So forcing the player to stop playing the game and go into the web store, even to alleviate that pressure, is something that's harder to establish and do right on a casual game than it is in some of the other categories that we saw. All right, so wrapping things up, I guess the PDF really screwed this up. I'm seeing the 72, yeah, right. So wrapping this up, when we look at all games, I didn't show this on the slides. When we look at all games, it's actually 72%. It's different games than the ones we saw appear on those charts, but it's actually 72% of all top grossing games. This is no longer the next big thing, right? We've been hailing web stores as this promising thing, this up-and-coming thing, a field that is waiting for regulation. It's waiting for no one. It's not waiting for regulation. It's not waiting for anything to happen. It's already live and kicking. It's widely adopted. And many of the publishers that I showed on those charts there are finding amazing success with their web stores, all the way up to 10%, 15%, 20% of the revenue, and even more than that. They're waiting for no one. And that's the kicker. So like I'll wrap my talk with that. So when we look at like terminology and monetization that we used in mobile gaming for the last couple of, like, the last decade really, we used to talk about monetization via either ads or IAP for a while. And then hybrid came on and became this thing that we need to have like a sophisticated strategy that combines the two in a balanced way. What we're getting to now is that there's this third venue of monetization that is widespread and ubiquitous. And we need to start thinking of, like the new hybrid is actually a three-headed beast. It's no longer these two of ads, revenue, and IAP. The new hybrid is three-way. And a word about balance and synergy. So when I say a three-way strategy, I don't mean just build the three, let your players choose. It's not just about choice. To do this effectively, what we saw being used with the best publishers that we have, the ones that are seeing the most amount of success, is that a good strategy is something that looks at the three or the two if you don't do ads in a combined way. You want to have a strategy that makes these channels complement each other. It's not just about migrating or cannibalizing a portion of the revenue in IAP and transitioning that outside to a web store. It's not about just increasing like a bigger size of the pie. It's about increasing the overall pie. We want to have something that complements. We want to increase the incremental revenue, not just migrate it. And when done right, when strategies are done right, to assume your player have multiple avenues to purchase on, some of them fit to a different type of behavior. Some of them are impulsive, some of them are intent-based. If you think of all of that together and you balance your strategy accordingly, that's the recipe to find success in this field. All right, if you're interested to hear more reports or more case studies, we often share information and data on our LinkedIn. Be free to follow. If you want to ask us anything about monetization, we always love to geek out about monetization and see how we can help your D2C strategy grow. Thanks. Any question?
Thank you very much. Great. Trying to work out. I think I can probably sneak a quick question if anyone wanted to ask one. Anyone willing to, or able, or desire? Okay, so in that case, I'm going to say thank you very much. And I think it's really important that we kind of understand that we are connecting to where players are. And if we're ignoring that kind of web interface, we are ignoring a massive opportunity for people to connect with us.
It's a matter of choice. The more option and choice that you give your players, they're going to buy more. That's what I meant when I said it's not just a matter of like migrating their transaction value from place A to place B. It's giving them more option that behaves differently. When you are intent-based outside of the game, you go to the web store, you have intent to buy. Give them more choice.
One of the things to reinforce that is one of the aspects I'm always concerned about, which is I don't think we spend enough time thinking about what the player is doing outside of the game at that point. You know, there's reasons why we choose a particular device, a particular game that's represented by what we're currently doing in our life stage, in our kind of real world circumstance. And if we ignore the mode of use of a player, we are going to miss massive opportunities. And that's why, for me, to not have access to that stuff means you're cutting off a possibility. And that to me seems like a mistake.
Yeah, spot on.
Cool. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Ed.
And on that note, we're